Now, you will have seen in the last few days that there's been a pretty dramatic downturn in key markets around the world, with one exception, which is the Greek stock market, which has been going up, which shows you something. And the key trigger to that has been, well, two things. One is, when is the Fed going to raise interest rates? And to my mind, that's not really a very important question. It's just a question of market timing. And by the way, I don't think they'll raise them until the end of this year, but they will raise them. But the second thing is, of course, the problems in China. And I was talking to a fund manager just now about China. He came up to me. Willie Forsyth is his name. I'm not sure where he is in the room. But, and he asked me about what I thought about China. And I said that longer term, I think China is a great investment. In fact, we may be coming to the point where China is going to be a buy. But I knew that China was not a buy when at a conference I was speaking at in April, the editor of a magazine called Money Week stood up, and she's actually a friend of mine, and said that China was the greatest buy in the history of the world and we should put all our money into it, and it was going to be a huge bull market. That marked the absolute top of the Chinese market, all right? And the reason that I wasn't so seduced by her words when she was sort of tracking Japan in the 60s versus China today and so forth, was I don't believe in going into maniacal investments. By that, I don't believe in following a tulip bulb theme just because it's on the ascendancy. And the reason I didn't like China at that time was that you had 1 million brokerage accounts being opened up every single week in China. Margin debt was through the roof. Stocks, which really no one knew what they did, were going up in price dramatically, sometimes 50% to 100% a day. And there were long, long lines of people at the brokerage firms looking at the screens. Now, that to me is not a market that you want to invest in. However, longer term, it could be that China will be a great place to invest because it has a vast population. It now has got the infrastructure that is first world. Its infrastructure is probably better than that we have in the United Kingdom. And the Chinese work very hard. And while they've got economic problems, and they certainly do at the moment, as you can see from the recent yuan devaluation, China ultimately will be the world's largest economy. In some measures, it already is the world's largest economy. And there are relatively cheap valuations to be had in China. So just as I bought Greece when the Brussels meetings were going on and everyone was talking about disaster and the breakup of the euro, which, by the way, will happen one day, but not right now, I think that we're getting to the point where China may be interesting. But the difference between me buying China today and buying it in April, when the pundits were out there saying buy China for the long term, is the difference between making a really good return long term and the difference between making not such a good return long term. In other words, you can choose the best investments, but you've also got to get your timing right. So don't follow a theme just because it's popular and because everyone else is getting into it, because that is a certain way, in my opinion, to erode the value of your capital.